Redline Logbook here for D. Gray Man's Artificial Exorcist Arc, Part 3. And we're starting off where we left off, inside of Kanda's flashback. Alan is generally confused on what's going on because he has no idea that he was pulled into Kanda's flashback. That is until Rode jumps on his back and informs him that, yeah, they were all dragged in along with Kanda. Of course, that was a mistake. Wisely didn't mean to drag both Rode and Alan into it. The point was to connect both Kanda and Alma's minds together. The old man Zhu Hao is basically begging Wisely to stop messing with Alma, let him rest. But Wisely's like, we're Noah. We have no obligation to show you mercy. Screw off. Back in the flashback, now that Alan understands what's happening, he gets to witness basically the birth and life of Kanda. And one of the first things he witnesses is Kanda beating the hell out of Alma anytime Alma tries to just spend time with him. And apparently this was a common occurrence that always led to these two just fighting with each other. It got to a point where both the head of the Asian branch, at the time a woman named Toy, and the assistant director of the Asian branch at the time, a man named Edgar Chan, are basically discussing what are they going to do about these two. Edgar's like, it's fine. We didn't get that hurt, and they're just covered in injuries. Not just him, but the rest of the medical staff. The science team are legitimately trying to understand why these two keep fighting with each other. Alma is very apologetic. He's sorry that they keep getting into fights and people keep getting hurt because of it. But Kanda's like, it's because he keeps following me around like a stalker. And he calls Alma a bitch, and he should go die. This leads to Alma just start crying. And basically, just another argument breaks out between the two of them. Both Kanda and Alma are given a somewhat explanation of their existence. I say that because we'll get to the future of the flashback, but for now, they are told that they were basically artificially made in these tube things for the purposes of becoming second exorcists to basically fight against Akuma and the Noah and such. Basically, they're artificial people. And while Kanda is being given this explanation of his birth, that is when he has his first hallucination. It is a vague outline of a woman. He's about to ask who that woman was because he's the only one who can see it, but that's when Alma, who is currently spying on them, sneezes, and at that moment, Kanda says, well, being stalked again, and he just takes off, ignoring Alma. What Alma was trying to ask Kanda to do is just to have a talk with him because he's lonely. He's literally the only kid there. In fact, he's the only artificial human there besides Kanda. And he just wants some companionship. Wakanda has no interest in that, and he says fuck off and just ignores him. There's then a little jump in time in the memory where we see Kanda on a medical table with a bunch of scientists trying to get him to synchronize with innocence. Now, normally if you do this and a person is not able to synchronize with innocence, they usually become a fallen, as we know. But since he is not a real person, he is a artificial person, this doesn't seem to cause Kanda to be turned into a fallen. Instead, what it does is just rip apart his body from the inside out, which is kind of okay. It's not. He's suffering. He's in a lot of pain. He's a kid that's basically being tortured. But because Kanda has that artificial body with that super regeneration, he's able to handle the amount of suffering and basically torture he's going through right now, trying to synchronize with this innocence. And every attempt just keeps failing. His body basically just rips apart and explodes with blood. He then regenerates, and he just does it over and over and over again. Consistent failure. After his daily attempts to synchronize with the innocence is over, he then starts to wander around the base. He ends up entering the room with the other artificial humans that are still in incubation, and there he sees the woman again. He tries calling out to her, he tries running to her, and he accidentally falls into one of the incubation tanks. Luckily for him, Alma was there to pull him out. Kanda gets angry, saying, why are you stalking me again? And Alma's like, I wasn't. I was here with them. You just showed up. So this is a normal thing that Alma did even before Kanda woke up. He would come and visit all of the different artificial humans who were still asleep, and he basically would talk with them. This seems to be his daily routine at the end of the day before he goes to bed. He just likes to talk with all of them. And while in the middle of trying to explain this to Kanda, Alma's arm just falls off. He was also currently synchronizing with innocence and failing over and over, and it heavily destroyed his body. Having your arm fall off is extremely painful, but Alma's trying to play it off. Kanda's like, whatever. He tries to leave, but his arm then falls off, and he also is in serious pain. And the two realize that they just can't move right now, and so they decide to just sit down next to each other and waiting for the regeneration to, grow back their arms. The two basically start talking about the lady that Kanda saw, and Alma's response is, oh, that could have just been Fu. She's this ghost lady that shows up. She's really nice, and she'll help you when you're crying to cheer you up. And he goes, wait, were you crying, Kanda? And Kanda's like, no, I wasn't crying. And then almost starts to push me even further, like, oh, so you were crying. And then Kanda just kicks him, and then the two start hitting each other. And because, once again, they're still broken apart because of their failure attempts to synchronize with innocence, the two just explode with blood and just collapse. While lying there soaked in their own blood, the two then start laughing at their situation. And this is really the beginning of these two becoming best friends. We then jump to a different scenario where Kanda is in a field of flowers, and he somewhat sees that ghostly woman again. She's saying something to him, but the problem is he can't actually hear what she's saying, and some random hand got in the way of his vision, so he can't properly see her either. And so he's like, get out of the way, let me hear her, let me see her. And then the next scene, the field of flowers covered in blood, and his body is covered in wounds. And then Kanda wakes up. Apparently he doesn't normally get up this early, but since he did, he decided to go with Alma to talk with the artificial people. Well, Alma talks to them. Kanda just sits there. But as he sits there, he sees the ghostly woman again. He then starts to yell at her, asking her what she wants, and then he collapses in severe pain. He's taken to the medical bay, and that's when the other scientists figure out that Kanda has been having these hallucinations. A younger version of Zuma, who's the head of this whole Second Exorcist project, is now pissed off because the fact that Kanda is currently having hallucinations means that he's currently regressing. This has apparently happened to other Second Exorcists that they've woken up earlier, and eventually they all go mad, and they have to be put down, basically. Not wanting to get to that point, Zuma then decides they will immediately stop synchronized testing, and instead they're going to freeze Kanda. Basically, they're going to put him into cryostasis. Alma is currently spying and listening in on all of this, and obviously doesn't want to lose his only friend. He knocks out a few of the doctors, and he kidnaps Kanda while he's unconscious, planning to have them both escape. The two are not able to get very far. They're immediately brought down by the crows. They're completely just shot up with needles, and then a barrier is used to completely pin them both down. Alma realizes that he is in no threat of being turned frozen, but Kanda is. And so the only idea he can think of at that moment is to kick Kanda off the building. And as Kanda is falling off a cliff, Alma's response is, if you get lucky, you might get to the outside. And Kanda's only response is to look at him in the most, you are an idiot look possible, and he just falls down into a dark pit. Still in the flashback and still in the Asian branch, we jump over to Mary and Bach. Yeah, well, younger versions of both of them. Apparently this is where Mary lost his eyesight because he currently has bandages over them. He's currently basically playing out a requiem because in the battle that caused him to go blind, all of his comrades and friends were killed. Bach sort of tries to comfort him, but then Mary says, in the next battle, I'll surely die. No, I'll be able to die. And that's when Bach realized that Mary wishes for death. And Bach asked him, does Mary hate them, the people who force him to fight? Mary says no, but it's unclear if he actually means it or not. But at that moment, that is when Kanda, who survived falling off the cliff, drags himself out of the water in front of the two of them. He still has a crow needle in his shoulder, and so Mary rips it out to help him. And Kanda just passes out. I'm assuming the crow needle can be tracked by the crow who threw it, because one just immediately appears in front of them, and Kanda is recaptured. We then get to see the rest of Kanda's dream, and he is a man reaching out to the sky, calling out to that spirit woman in a field of those flowers, and that is when a level 2 Akuma appears, says, oh, you're still alive, and then stomps on his head, killing him. This wakes Kanda up. Kanda sees that he's on the table about to be put to permanent sleep. He looks at the other scientists, he starts laughing, and he starts yelling in rage. And he says, those weren't hallucinations, were they? They never were. They were memories. I was killed by an Akuma. He demands how many years he's been dead. He demands what happened. What did they do to them? What did they do to all of the Second Exorcists? Why is he alive? Explain themselves, but none of the scientists want to. Zhu Mao then orders to start, and they begin to seal away Kanda. He then screams at them in rage, calling them bastards, saying, aren't we supposed to be allies? And Zhu Mao's response is, the only thing that matters is the innocence. The only thing that matters is winning this holy war. And without you, exorcists, we cannot save the world. And Alan is witnessing all of this, and he begins to get dragged deeper into Kanda's memories to the point where he starts to hallucinate as he is Kanda, and he just starts to go mad. Fortunately for Alan, Rhoda was also dragged in, and she's able to snap him out of it, able to get him to realize that he is Alan Walker, he is not Kanda. This is not happening, this is something that did happen. These are just memories. And Alan is able to just calm down and bring himself back to reality. Alan and Rogue then pop over to a dark room and they're confused what's going on. But the thing is, they aren't just stuck inside of Kanda's memories, they're also in Alma's memories. And so now they're seeing things by Alma's perspective. And he, once again, escaped from the scientists. He's all bloody and beaten. and he's currently looking for his innocence. He realizes that it's the only way he can save Kanda. It's the only thing that will give him the power to save Kanda. Alan then realizes that this is probably their goal, to wake Alma, and he asks Rogue about it, but all she does is just give him a calm smile. Eventually, Alma is able to find where the innocence is being housed, and he starts to go for his when he gets covered in crow talismans and he's set on fire. Both Alan and the scientist in the memory are screaming at the crows to stop hurting Alma, but the crows don't care. They just keep throwing more and more talismans at him, keep setting him on fire. And in that moment of being completely incinerated by flames, Alma is finally able to synchronize with his innocence, and he screams, "I will save you." And in one move, he cuts open all the capsules that are holding the innocence, and he cuts both of the crows in half, killing them. Rogue then says, "Poor child, this must be when he saw it." And Alan's like, "Saw what?" And when Alma cut the innocence capsules, what spilled out were the corpses of former exorcists. The second Exorcist project, quite simply, was a project to create artificial bodies and then implant the brains of former exorcists into those bodies and hope that their former innocence would then synchronize with these new people. As you imagine, Alan is stunned and horrified for what he just learned. It even brings him to tears, which is pretty rare for Alan. As for Alma, the person who realizes what he really is, this causes him to go insane. At the exact same time, Kanda is finally been put under permanent sleep. Or at least he should have been. At least an entire day passes by when Kanda begins to dream again. He continues to remember this old life he once had. He remembers being in a field with the woman he loves, basically telling her that he would like to spend the rest of his life with her. But that's when Kanda begins to realize that these are his old memories of his old life. In fact, they're technically not even his memories anymore. They're the memories of a dead man whose brain he's been given. And this pain and rage and desire to see the woman he loves all infuse into him at once, and his innocence activates, forcing him out of his coma and imbuing him with the power of Mugen. This enrages Kanda, because this whole time his innocence refused to synchronize with him, but now it does. At this moment, when he can't do anything, when he's lost everything, he's filled with undying levels of rage and hatred for the innocence. At the same time, he realizes he could probably use it to find the woman he loves. He starts smashing through walls, asking himself, what does he do now? Kill everyone in this place? And that really would have been his plan. But fate had other plans. The first person he runs into is actually Mary. He remembers Mary as the guy who helped him, and so at that moment, Kanda isn't full of bloodlust, especially since Mary is currently just lying there, seemingly dead. And the reason for this is because after Mary got treatment for his eyes, he went back on the battlefield, got a massive blow to the head, and was on the verge of dying. And so they decided, hey, he's a lost cause, we might as well use him for the second Exorcist project. Yes, Mary was originally going to have his brain taken out and put into a clone. Kinda actually feeling pity for this guy, actually starts kind of like rubbing his head where his wound is, and some of Kanda's blood actually pours into the wound on his head. And at that moment, Kanda's super healing actually heals the wound, saving Mary's life. Mary immediately recognizes the voice of Kanda as the little kid that he met before and almost died. And at this moment, these two actually become friends. And this connection actually is what saves Kanda from losing himself and going on a blood-soaked revenge spree. And so the two decide they're going to escape, and they start crawling through the vents together. Mary's being the very calm and charming man that he always is, being very kind to Kanda, and Kanda's like, surprised you wouldn't be angry. And Mary's response is, I am angry. I'm furious. The only reason why I'm able to get through this is because I have you with me. Human connection is kind of important, and you need that to survive in this world. And that's when Kanda begins to realize why Alma always followed him around, because that's exactly what Alma needed. He needed human connection. And now finally able to understand that, Kanda's plan is to find Alma and have all three of them get out of this place. After leaving the vents, the first person that Kanda actually runs into is in fact Alma. The two are all excited to see each other, that is, until Kanda looks around and it's a bloodbath. Alma slaughtered the entire science team. Alma then says, I'm so happy to see you, but I have to kill you. Alma goes in, starts attacking rapidly at Kanda. All Kanda can do at the moment is dodge because he's currently carrying Mary, and so at a certain point he ends up having his entire arm just chopped off. Kanda drops Mary and then he gets stabbed through the stomach. That's when Alma starts just talking in a very incoherent, crazy way, saying that he waited so long, talking to everyone. He's talking about the other clones, and he was always wondering why they never woke up. And he says, now it makes sense. Why would any of them want to wake up? And we get an image of all of those pools with the other clones in it, and Alma systematically slaughtered every one of them as they dreamt. Kanda then asked if his memories came back, and the absolute dread on Alma's face when Kanda said that is clear that they did come back, and he didn't want Kanda to know. Then Alma says something even more depressing. As soon as he got his memories back, he didn't immediately start slaughtering everyone. He actually tried to commit suicide, but his body kept regenerating. But since that won't work, he decides to then continue to stab Kanda over and over again to kill him. As Kanda's bleeding out and dying, Alma then says, this has to be done, because in the end, they're just going to keep using us as slaves, keep resurrecting us over and over again. It has to be destroyed, all of it. And the thing that saves Kanda at this moment is the memory of that woman, the memory that belonged to the man that he once was. And so at that moment, Kanda chooses to live, and he literally cuts Alma into fours. At this moment, that is when Alan loses his cool and patience, and he starts to scream at Kanda, calling him a dumbass, saying, how can you let someone mess with your memories like this? How can you allow this to happen? And in complete rage, Alan is actually able to move his real body and punch the real Kanda. And of course, Wisely, the one putting everyone under this hypnotic trance, is like, he moved? How? That's not how that works. And Alan punches Kanda not just in the face, but directly on the forehead, where Wisely's spell is being done, shatters it, and actually causes Wisely to bleed from his own forehead. Rhode's like, you broke Wisely's spell, but you might be too late. At that moment, the pipes that have wrapped around all of the scientists start to move, start to crush them, because Alma has awoken. And not just that, he has become an Akuma. The Earl then gives his order to Alma. Kill everyone. And a massive explosion happens that creates a radiating light that can be seen for miles. We then jump over to Link and Tuwaku, one of the third exorcists. The two of them were on their way to the North American branch when they see this massive explosion just blowing up the North American branch. And at that moment, Tuwaku, her eye then starts to transform into this bulging monstrosity. She feels it, she falls to the ground, and then when she gets back up, it's back to normal, and she begins to wonder, what the hell was that? So yeah, all the third exorcists, since they're connected to Alma, and since Alma turned into an Akuma, they're now starting to turn into Akumas. Alma finally rises, fully conscious and aware, and his first thought is to find Kanda. And that is where we're going to leave this video off. So if you enjoy this video, subscribe, give a thumbs up so you can enjoy more D-Gray Man and other man things. Thank you, and have a great day.